Once upon a time, in a grand kingdom filled with high towers and blossoming gardens, there lived a king who had 12 daughters, each more beautiful than the last. Their chambers were the finest in all the land, lined with soft silks and windows that opened to the fresh morning sun. The daughters were known far and wide not only for their loveliness, but for their grace and charm. They sang like nightingales, danced like forest fairies, and walked with the dignity of queens. Each night, the king would kiss his daughters good night and lock their chamber doors with heavy bolts. Yet every morning, when the princesses awoke, something most curious appeared. Their shoes, all 12 pairs, were worn and frayed, as if they had danced all through the night. The maids who polished them could not understand it, and the cobblers who repaired them were puzzled by how quickly they wore thin. The king was troubled. "How can it be," he said, stroking his beard, "that my daughters' shoes are worn each morning, though their chamber doors remain locked tight?" At first he thought it a trick. He questioned the guards, but they swore no one entered or left the princess's room during the night. Soon whispers spread through the kingdom. People said the princesses were enchanted, that they slipped into another world at night. Others claimed mischievous elves danced with them until dawn. Whatever the truth, the mystery deepened. The king, determined to know the answer, made a proclamation. "Whoever can discover where my daughters go each night and how their shoes are worn to tatters shall have the choice to marry one of them and become heir to the throne. But should he fail after 3 nights, his life shall be forfeit." The challenge brought many suitors, for the reward was great. Princes from faraway lands, noble lords, and brave warriors all came to try their luck. Each was given in 3 nights to watch and discover the secret. Yet every attempt ended the same way. Each man sat outside the princess's chamber, determined to keep watch. But when morning came, their heads had drooped in slumber, and the princess's shoes were once again worn to ribbons. The king grew more worried as his daughters only smiled mysteriously and said nothing. The princesses were gentle and kind, but there was a sparkle in their eyes, as though they carried a secret too wonderful to tell. The palace buzzed with talk, and the people grew restless, eager for someone to solve the riddle. And so, the story begins, with 12 princesses who danced in the shadows of night, and a kingdom waiting for an answer that no man yet had found. Morning after morning, the palace echoed with the same astonishment. The maids would enter the princess's room to draw the curtains, only to find slippers scattered across the floor, the delicate satin worn through, and the soles blackened with use. Each princess, from the eldest to the youngest, would sit with innocent smiles, as if they had spent the whole night asleep. The eldest princess, who was wise and cautious, would often answer the maids' startled exclamations with calmness. "We must dream heavily in the night," she would say, though her twinkling eyes betrayed a secret. The youngest, barely grown, would giggle softly, covering her mouth as though she could not help but laugh at the mystery. But as the days stretched into weeks, the king's worry grew heavier. It was not only that the princesses kept their secret so well, but that many brave men had already lost their lives in the attempt to uncover it. Every failure meant another solemn toll of the bells in the palace tower, another prince or knight gone, unable to return to his kingdom. The king, though stern, was not cruel at heart. He loved his daughters dearly, but his promise was firm, and his pride as a ruler would not allow him to bend. "A king's word must stand," he declared. "If none can succeed, then none deserve their hand." The mystery seemed unsolvable. In hushed corners of the palace, servants whispered. "Perhaps the princesses are bewitched," said one. "Or maybe they are spirits who vanish each night into the fairy realm." Meanwhile, the princesses continued their lives with grace. They played harps and lutes, embroidered fine tapestries, and strolled in the royal gardens. Yet at night, when the doors closed, their eyes gleamed with anticipation. The youngest would whisper eagerly, "Soon, sisters, soon." And when midnight came, the silence of their chamber hid a secret that none had yet discovered. The mystery weighed heavily on the king's heart. By day he walked the halls of his palace in deep thought. By night he paced restlessly, unable to find sleep. He loved his daughters dearly, yet their silence troubled him more than words of defiance ever could. Each princess met his gaze with smiles so sweet that he could not bear to be harsh. Yet the riddle of their worn shoes pressed on his mind like a stone. At last, he resolved to proclaim the challenge once more, louder and farther than before. Heralds were sent across kingdoms, through forests, across rivers, and into the cities of distant lands. They cried aloud, "Whoever can uncover the secret of the 12 princesses shall have his choice of bride and inherit the crown. But should he fail, his life shall be claimed as the price." The words rang through villages and castles alike, stirring both hope and fear. Many shook their heads. Too many had already tried and met a grim end. Yet the promise of glory and the beauty of the princesses tempted brave men still. One by one, more princes came. Each vowed to stay awake, to watch carefully, to keep their eyes open through the darkest hours. Yet, as if by enchantment, each suitor fell into a deep sleep before midnight. Morning after morning the tale was the same. Shoes scattered, souls worn, mystery unsolved. The princesses, meanwhile, grew more silent with each failure. When questioned by their father, they lowered their eyes, lips sealed. The eldest would say softly, "Father, we know nothing," and the youngest would cling to her sister's arm, hiding a secret smile. At last the king sat upon his throne with a heavy sigh. "Is there no one in all the kingdoms who can solve this riddle?" he wondered aloud. Yet in the corners of the great hall whispers stirred once more, for word had spread that a man unlike the rest was on his way to the palace, an old soldier, worn by many battles, but clever and steadfast of heart. Before the soldier's arrival, 3 more princes tried their luck. The first was bold, declaring, "No spell can trick me." He carried a flask of bitter herbs to keep his eyes open. But before the clock struck 12, his head had sunk to his chest, and the princess's shoes were once again ruined by dawn. The second prince was cautious, watching closely. He pinned his cloak with a charm said to ward off enchantments. Yet, like the first, he too slumbered deeply, as though the very air of the chamber carried sleep. The third prince was gentle, speaking kindly to the princesses, hoping one of them might reveal the truth. The youngest almost whispered something, but her eldest sister quickly silenced her with a sharp look. By morning, his eyes had closed, his efforts wasted, and the slippers once more were worn thin. The king grew grim. His courtiers grew silent. "The task is hopeless," they murmured, yet still the king's word held. Any man could try, if he dared risk his life. And so, when the old soldier arrived at the palace gates, weary but steadfast, the guards could not help but laugh. What hope has this ragged man when princes and noble lords have failed? Yet the soldier only smiled quietly. "A mystery does not bow to wealth or title," he said. "Sometimes the truth is found by those who look where others do not." The soldier was no longer young. His face was lined with years of travel, and his cloak was worn by wind and rain. Yet his eyes were sharp, and his spirit had not dimmed. Having served bravely in many battles, he now wandered the land, seeking not war, but wisdom. When he heard of the king's challenge, he thought, perhaps courage is needed not on the field of battle, but in the quiet of mystery. He came to the palace, bowing humbly before the throne. "Your Majesty," he said, "grant me 3 nights to solve the riddle of your daughters." The courtiers scoffed, but the king studied him with weary eyes. "You know the price?" he asked gravely. "I do," the soldier replied, "but I have faced death before, and do not fear it. What I fear more is leaving mysteries unsolved." The king, though doubtful, agreed. The soldier was shown to a chamber beside the princess's room, as all others had been before. That evening, the princesses smiled at him kindly, but the eldest whispered to her sisters once the door was closed, "This man is clever. We must be careful." Little did they know, the soldier had already met someone on his way to the palace, an old woman who had given him wise counsel and a cloak of invisibility. With it, he might uncover what no prince ever had. And so the stage was set. 12 princesses with a secret, a king desperate for answers, and an old soldier with sharp eyes and steady heart, ready to face the unknown. Before the soldier reached the palace gates, his path took him through a deep, shadowed forest. The trees swayed gently, and the air seemed thick with secrets. As he walked, he heard the soft rustle of branches, and to his surprise, saw an old woman seated on a mossy stone. Her back was bent, and her hair silver as moonlight, yet her eyes sparkled with knowledge far beyond her years. "Where are you bound, good soldier?" she asked in a voice both kind and knowing. The soldier bowed politely. "To the king's palace," he said. "I wish to solve the mystery of the 12 princesses, though many have tried and failed before me." The old woman's gaze grew serious. "Ah, the princesses," she murmured. "They guard a secret hidden deep below the earth, one that has trapped many men. If you go unprepared, you too shall fail and pay with your life." The soldier did not falter. "I have faced danger before. Tell me what I must do." The woman smiled, pleased by his bravery. From her satchel she drew out a cloak, woven of thread so fine it shimmered like water. "This is no ordinary cloak," she explained. "When you wear it, you will become invisible to all eyes. With it, you may follow the princesses unseen. But beware. Take only what you need and speak not a word until the time is right." The soldier accepted the cloak with gratitude. "Your wisdom shall not be forgotten," he promised. The woman nodded. "Remember also, do not drink the wine the princesses offer, nor trust the peace of their smiles. Their secret lies below, and you must follow with patience and silence." With these words, she vanished into the trees, as though she had never been there at all. The soldier held the cloak tightly, his heart steady. He knew now that fortune had guided him to her, and that with this gift he might uncover the truth no other man had seen. And so, strengthened with wisdom and armed with the magic cloak, he journeyed on to the palace, ready for the test that awaited. That evening the soldier was welcomed into the palace. He was given food and wine, and the king himself reminded him of the rules. "3 nights you have," said the king gravely. "Fail to bring me the truth, and by the 3rd dawn your life will be claimed." The soldier bowed humbly. "So be it, your majesty." When night came, the soldier was shown to his chamber beside the princesses. Just before the doors closed, the eldest princess smiled at him. "Rest well, kind soldier," she said sweetly. The soldier returned the smile, but said nothing. Once inside his chamber, he drew the cloak from his satchel and draped it across his shoulders. It melted into the air, and with a single glance at his hands, he saw they had vanished from sight. Truly, the cloak was enchanted. He lay upon the bed, pretending to sleep, but his ears were sharp. As midnight drew near, he heard the soft whispers of the princesses in the chamber next door. The eldest's voice was low but firm. "The soldier sleeps soundly, sisters. We may prepare." The youngest giggled, though a note of nervousness trembled in her laugh. "But what if he wakes?" "Hush," said the eldest. "Not one man has ever resisted our wine." The soldier smiled in the dark. He remembered the old woman's warning, and was glad he had not touched the cup of wine they had offered at supper. Quietly, he rose, slipped on the cloak, and waited. A faint scraping sound reached his ears. The princesses had drawn aside their beds, revealing a trap-door beneath. One by one he heard them descend a hidden staircase. The soldier followed swiftly, unseen by their eyes. And so, the mystery at last began to unfold. The staircase wound deep beneath the palace, cool and damp, like the breath of the earth. The soldier followed the 12 princesses closely, careful not to let his invisible cloak brush against them. Their slippers tapped softly on the steps, and their laughter echoed in the stone passage. At last, the stairs opened into a wondrous place, a tunnel lined with silver trees. Their branches shimmered like moonlight, their leaves glistening like polished mirrors. The youngest princess clapped her hands with delight, and the others smiled, their eyes shining with anticipation. The soldier, marveling, broke off a branch of silver as proof, though the crack made the eldest glance sharply behind her. "Did you hear something?" she whispered. "It was only the stones," said another, though the youngest shivered. The soldier followed silently as they moved deeper. Soon they came upon a second forest, where every leaf glowed with gold, shining brighter than the sun, and beyond that, a third, where diamonds sparkled like stars in the dark earth. The soldier's heart beat fast. These forests alone were treasures beyond imagination, yet the princesses pressed on, as if their true destination lay still farther. At last, the tunnel opened to a wide lake, black as glass beneath the torchlight. Along the shore waited 12 small boats, each with a prince dressed in shining robes. The princesses greeted them warmly, stepping into the boats with joy. Unseen, the soldier slipped into the boat of the youngest princess. The vessel dipped heavily, and she cried, "Why is my boat so slow tonight?" "Perhaps the wind resists us," said the prince beside her. But the soldier only smiled in silence, his cloak hiding him well. The boats glided smoothly across the dark lake, oars dipping in quiet rhythm. The water gleamed with faint sparks, as though stars had fallen into its depths. The princesses laughed and whispered, their joy so great it was as if the world above did not exist. On the far shore stood a palace more splendid than any the soldier had ever seen. Its walls gleamed with crystal, its windows shone with jewels, and from within came the sound of music, sweet and wild, inviting all who heard it. The soldier's eyes widened. So this was their secret, a hidden palace of enchantment beneath the earth, where the princesses danced until dawn. Inside, the halls blazed with light. Golden lamps shone, and music filled the air. The 12 princes bowed, and the princesses began to dance. Their feet moved like feathers, swift and graceful, never tiring. Hour upon hour they danced, while the soldier watched unseen. At last their slippers were worn through, the delicate satin torn and the soles blackened. Still they danced, laughing and twirling until the first pale hint of dawn touched the crystal windows. Then the princes led them back to the boats, and across the lake they returned. Up the silver stairs they climbed, through the forests of gold and diamond, back into their chamber above. The soldier slipped behind them silently, watching as they placed their worn slippers neatly by the bed. By the time the king's guards came to unlock the door, the princesses were tucked into bed, their faces serene. But the soldier knew now the truth, and he had proof enough to reveal it. When morning came, the king asked the soldier what he had seen, but the soldier bowed and said, "Forgive me, your majesty, but I dare not speak until my task is complete. Grant me 2 more nights, and then I shall tell you all." The king frowned, but agreed. That second night, the princesses once again smiled sweetly at the soldier, and once again they poured him wine. He accepted the cup politely, but when they looked away, he let it spill into the fire. Then he lay still, as though in slumber. Midnight came, and once again the princesses lifted the hidden trapdoor. They descended, slippers tapping lightly on the stairs, and once again the soldier followed beneath his cloak. The forest glittered even more brightly that night, the silver shining like new moonlight, the gold blazing like the rising sun, the diamonds burning like 1,000 stars. Again, the soldier broke a branch from each forest. Each crack startled the youngest princess, who whispered nervously, "There it is again. Someone follows us." But the eldest only shook her head. "You imagine too much, little one." Across the lake they rowed, the boats gliding swiftly to the enchanted palace. Again the music soared, and again the princesses danced until their shoes were worn thin. The soldier, silent and unseen, watched and waited, knowing the truth was his to reveal in time. On the third night, the soldier prepared with even greater care. Once again he feigned sleep, and once again the princesses whispered and slipped away into the hidden stair. He rose silently, his cloak of invisibility shrouding him, and followed close behind. The air beneath the palace grew colder, and soon the passage widened into the first enchanted forest. Here the trees gleamed with trunks of shining silver, their branches bending low with leaves as smooth as mirrors. Even the grass glittered faintly, catching the glow of the princesses' lanterns. The soldier paused to marvel at the sight, for never had he seen such splendor. He reached up and snapped a silver twig from one of the branches. The crack rang sharp and clear, and the youngest princess spun around in alarm. "There! Someone follows us!" she cried, her voice trembling, but the eldest only laughed gently, though her eyes narrowed. "Nonsense, little one. It is but the wind in the branches. Come, sisters, We must not be late." Reluctantly, the youngest let herself be led on, though her steps were cautious. The soldier followed closely, hiding his smile. With the silver twig tucked safely away, he walked through the shimmering grove. The trees arched high above them, their leaves tinkling softly, like tiny bells when stirred. It was as if the forest itself was alive, whispering secrets too old to be spoken aloud. Beyond the silver forest, the path began to slope downward once more. The soldier quickened his pace, for he knew greater wonders still awaited. Soon the silver shimmer faded, and the travelers entered a second forest more radiant still. Here the trees blazed with golden trunks, their branches heavy with leaves that gleamed like molten sunlight. The air seemed warmer, filled with a gentle glow that lit the path as brightly as day. The princesses moved eagerly, their gowns glistening as the golden light brushed across their silken threads. The eldest raised her hand, smiling. "Behold, sisters, the forest of gold, how it welcomes us once more." The youngest, however, walked with unease. She glanced back often, whispering, "I feel it. Someone is near." "Your fears tire us," one sister murmured. "No man has ever passed father's guards, nor could they follow us here." Still, the youngest shivered. The soldier, careful as a shadow, broke off a golden branch for proof. The sharp crack echoed loudly, and the princesses froze. "There it is again!" the youngest gasped. "Do you not hear it?" But the eldest pressed her lips together firmly. "It is only the sound of our slippers upon the stones. Be still, child." Reluctantly, the youngest fell silent. The soldier, hidden beneath his cloak, smiled once more. He now carried proof not only of the silver forest, but of gold as well. The golden light dimmed behind them as they pressed onward. Their feet carried them to a third wonder greater still, and the soldier's heart beat faster with anticipation. The tunnel opened at last into the most dazzling forest of all. Here the trees were not silver nor gold, but diamond, their trunks like crystal pillars, their branches casting prismatic sparks with every movement. The air shimmered as though filled with falling stars, and the soldier's breath caught at the sight. The princesses gasped in delight, their eyes bright as they lifted their skirts and ran laughing among the glittering trunks. The eldest said, "Sisters, rejoice! Tonight we dance beneath the trees of diamonds, the fairest of them all." Even the youngest forgot her fears for a moment, marveling at the radiant glow. Yet when the soldier snapped a diamond twig from a tree, the sound was like glass shattering, sharp and loud. She whirled around, face pale. "Please, sisters, I beg you, someone follows us." But the others only laughed, though their voices shook slightly. "If someone did, he would have been caught long ago," one said. The soldier carried the diamond twig carefully, its weight heavy with proof. He knew that when his task was done, the king would not doubt his word. Beyond the glittering forest, the path sloped downward once more, and a faint glow appeared ahead, reflecting softly like moonlight on water. The youngest clutched her gown nervously. "The lake awaits," she whispered. And indeed, the soldier saw it, the enchanted lake, dark and still, with 12 boats waiting along its shore. At the edge of the lake stood 12 boats, each manned by a prince clothed in splendid garments. Their eyes shone with joy as they greeted the princesses. "Come, dear ones," they called. "The palace waits, and the music has already begun." The princesses stepped eagerly into the boats, their laughter rising like bells across the still waters. Each princess sat beside her prince, save for the youngest, who hesitated before stepping in. Her heart still trembled with unease. The soldier, unseen, slipped into her boat, and as he settled down, the vessel dipped heavily in the water. "Why is my boat so slow tonight?" the youngest cried. "It drags as though another weighs it down." The prince only smiled, dipping his oars. "You are light as ever, fair one. Perhaps the lake itself resists us." The soldier held back a laugh. He sat quietly, his cloak concealing him perfectly, while the boat glided steadily across the black waters. The surface shimmered faintly with sparks of silver, as if countless stars had sunk into its depths. On the far shore, towers glittered in the distance. The soldier's heart beat quick. At last he would see the palace where the princesses danced away the night. At last the boats touched shore, and the soldier stepped lightly out behind the princesses. Before them rose a palace more splendid than words could tell. Its walls were made of crystal, glowing softly as if lit by moonlight from within. Jewels sparkled at its gates, and the windows blazed with warm golden light. From inside came music, sweet, wild, and irresistible. Flutes sang like birds at dawn, harps rang like flowing water, and drums beat like the heart of the earth. The princesses hurried forward, their eyes alight. The princes bowed low, and together they entered the hall. There, in a chamber vast as the heavens, the dancing began. The soldier, invisible, watched as the sisters whirled and spun, their feet flying over the shining floor. The music rose higher and higher, and their laughter rang like bells. Hour after hour they danced, their slippers wearing thin. The soldier counted carefully, once, twice, thrice, until at last each slipper was worn through. Still they danced, tireless, as though enchanted by the very music. The youngest faltered once, gasping, "We must stop. My shoes are ruined already." But the eldest urged her on. "One night more, little one. Tomorrow we rest." The soldier took note of everything, his proof gathering with each passing moment. He knew the mystery was nearly his to solve, yet he waited patiently, for the tale was not yet done. The soldier knew that one night's discovery was not enough. Though he had seen the silver, gold, and diamond forests, though he had watched the princesses cross the lake and dance with their 12 waiting princes until dawn, he also knew the king would never believe a tale spoken without proof. So the soldier returned each evening, cloaked in magic, and followed the sisters again and again. Every night was the same, yet every night was no less wondrous. The princesses descended with excitement, their gowns glittering in candlelight as they slipped through the trapdoor. The soldier followed, silent and unseen, down into the hidden passage, through the forest that gleamed like treasure chests of the earth. Each time he snapped a branch, first silver, then gold, then diamond, though always he did so with care, lest the sound raise suspicion, and always the youngest looked behind her with wide eyes, whispering that someone might be near. Yet the eldest dismissed her worries, her voice steady with pride. "Would you have us fear shadows?" she said one night as they walked beneath golden leaves. "No man has yet solved our mystery. None will ever do so." Still, the soldier kept close, his eyes sharp, his heart steady. He watched the princesses step into their little boats, saw the enchanted princes row them across the shining waters. He sat near enough to feel the spray of the lake and hear the laughter that rang over the rippling waves. Each night, in the crystal palace, he saw them dance until their shoes were worn through, until their cheeks glowed with the joy of motion. The music of the enchanted halls filled his heart, and he wondered at the spell that held the sisters so fast to this secret life. Was it love? Was it enchantment? Or something more mysterious, binding them to dance beneath the earth forever? For 3 nights he followed, gathering proof. Silver, gold, diamond branches, and at last a golden goblet from which one of the princesses had drunk. Each treasure glowed with enchantment, tokens of a secret world that few mortal eyes would ever behold. Yet though he carried proof, he also carried questions. Would the king believe him? Would the princesses forgive him when their secret was revealed? He felt a pang of sorrow for them, for though they had deceived their father, they had also lived a joy no one else could understand. Their laughter was not wicked, their secret not cruel, but born of enchantment, of some spell that called them deeper than reason. On the 3rd morning, as the princesses returned weary and their shoes in tatters, the soldier climbed from the trapdoor once more, his bundle of wonders hidden. The king's challenge was nearly over, and the soldier knew the time had come to speak. But in his heart, he wondered, when the silence was broken, when truth stood in daylight, what would become of the 12 sisters and their enchanted dance? The king had commanded that whoever uncovered the mystery of the 12 worn shoes should speak after 3 nights. And so, on the dawn of the 3rd day, the soldier sat quietly in his chamber, his treasures hidden in a chest. The silver branch gleamed like moonlight frozen, the golden branch shone like fire, the diamond sparkled as though it held the stars themselves, and the goblet glittered with its own secret light. He remembered the warning of the old woman, "Speak truth, but wisely." Her words echoed in his mind, for he knew truth could wound as sharply as it could heal. The princesses were not wicked. They were daughters who had lived in enchantment. Yet the king's decree was stern, and no lie could stand before him. That morning the king summoned him. The court was filled with lords and nobles, and the 12 princesses stood together, their eyes bright yet wary. Their gowns were fresh and clean, their faces composed, but the soldier could see the faint weariness that no rest could hide. They bowed before their father, their beauty a shield against the truth they feared would come. "Now, soldier," said the king, his voice like thunder rolling through the hall, "you have watched and waited 3 nights. Tell me, where do my daughters go? What secret wears out their shoes each night?" The soldier stepped forward. He bowed low, then raised his eyes to meet the king's. His voice was steady, for though his heart beat fast, he carried the weight of truth. "Your Majesty," he said, "your daughters descend each night through a hidden door in their chamber. A passage leads them down into an enchanted world beneath the earth. There they pass through forests of silver, gold, and diamonds, and at last they reach a lake where 12 princes await them. They cross the water, and in a palace of crystal they dance until dawn, and so their shoes are worn through." "The cut," Urt gasped. The princesses paled, for they knew his words rang true. Yet the king frowned, and his gaze sharpened. "You speak boldly, but where is your proof?" At this the soldier opened his chest. He laid before the throne the silver branch, the golden, and the diamond, each shining with a light of its own. Then he set forth the goblet, heavy and glittering with enchantment. The hall fell silent, for no man could doubt such tokens. The king leaned forward, wonder filling his eyes. "It is true," he whispered. "The mystery is revealed." Then his gaze turned to his daughters, who stood trembling like flowers in a storm. The king's voice rang across the chamber, stern and commanding. "My daughters, is this tale true? Have you deceived me, your father and your king, slipping away each night into some hidden world, leaving your shoes in tatters as if from battle?" The 12 princesses clutched their gowns, their eyes downcast. For a moment none spoke. Then, at last, the eldest, with a sigh heavy as stone, stepped forward. Her voice trembled but did not falter. "It is true, father," she said. "We did not mean to dishonor you, but enchantment called us, and we could not resist. Each night we journeyed down the secret stair, across the forests, over the lake, and into the crystal palace, where music filled the air, and our feet would not rest until the dawn. We meant no harm, but the spell was strong, and the joy of the dance was greater than our will." The king's eyes softened with sorrow, though his voice remained firm. "Why did you not speak? Why did you not trust me?" "Because," whispered the youngest, tears in her eyes, "we feared you would forbid us, and we could not bear to lose the music." The hall murmured with astonishment. Some nobles shook their heads in disapproval. Others wept at the beauty of the tale. But all knew the soldier had spoken true. The king rose from his throne, his robe trailing like a storm cloud. "Then the mystery is ended. By my word, the soldier has fulfilled my decree. He shall choose one of you to be his bride, and with her shall inherit a kingdom." The sisters bowed their heads, silent, their fate sealed. The soldier stood with dignity, though his heart weighed heavy. He had not come seeking riches or a crown, but truth had led him here, and the king's command could not be refused. The king's face was solemn as he looked upon his daughters, and the great hall waited in silence for his words. His throne seemed taller than the mountains, his crown heavier than the sky, for he was not only a father, but a ruler whose word must stand firm before all. "My daughters," he said at last, his voice deep and steady, "you have confessed. You have hidden this mystery from me, slipping away each night to a world not your own. You have worn out your shoes in secret, deceived your father, and broken trust. Yet, though your silence grieves me, I cannot deny that enchantment played its hand, nor can I say your hearts were cruel. Therefore you shall not be punished as traitors, but neither shall you continue your secret dance." The eldest bowed her head, her eyes glistening. "We understand, Father. The spell was greater than us, and yet we cherished it. Forgive us, if you can." The youngest wept openly, hiding her face in her hands. "We only wished to dance. We never wished to hurt you." The king's stern gaze softened, and he placed a hand upon the arm of his throne. "The soldier has spoken truth, and by my decree he has fulfilled the challenge. Therefore, as promised, he shall take one of you as his bride, and with her he shall inherit a crown." The princesses exchanged glances. Their hearts were full of many emotions: sorrow that their secret world was ended, relief that their burden of silence was lifted, and fear of what would come next. Yet none spoke against their father's decree, for his word was law. The king turned to the soldier, who stood steady and humble before him. "You have been brave," he said. "You sought truth where others failed. You endured temptation and fear, and you brought proof to my throne. Now, choose among my daughters the one who shall be your wife." The soldier bowed low, his heart heavy with the weight of choice. He looked upon the 12 princesses, each fairer than the dawn. He saw the eldest, wise and graceful, who had borne the burden of leading her sisters. He saw the youngest, innocent and fearful, who had trembled with every sound in the secret passage. One by one, he looked upon them all, and he knew that whichever choice he made would shape his life and theirs forever. The court held its breath. The princesses stood still as statues, their jeweled gowns glittering in the torchlight. The soldier lifted his head, his voice firm yet gentle. "I choose the eldest," he said, "for she has shown wisdom and courage in guiding her sisters, and it is right that she share in the honor of truth revealed." The king nodded, and the hall murmured with approval. The eldest princess stepped forward, her face pale but proud. She curtsied deeply, accepting her fate with grace. So the king declared, "It is done. Let preparations begin, for a wedding shall unite truth with royalty, and a soldier shall be king." The days that followed were filled with bustle and cheer. The palace, once hushed with mystery, now rang with music of a different kind, the music of preparation. Servants hurried through the halls with garlands of flowers, cooks stirred pots rich with spices, and seamstresses worked from dawn till dusk, stitching gowns of velvet and lace. Bells were polished, banners were hung, and the kingdom whispered of the soldier who had solved the riddle no prince could unravel. The eldest princess, though her heart still carried memories of the enchanted palace beneath the earth, stood with quiet dignity. She had once led her sisters in secrecy, but now she would stand beside the soldier in the open light of day. There was sorrow in the farewell to her midnight joy, yet there was also hope in the promise of a new life. The soldier, now honored as both hero and prince, remained humble. He wore his new garments of silk with the same steady grace he had worn his old cloak of travel. He did not boast of his victory nor demand riches, but thanked the king with bowed head and spoke gently to all who came near. The people loved him for it, and the court praised his wisdom. At last the wedding day arrived. The bells of the palace rang loud and sweet, echoing across the hills and rivers. Nobles and villagers alike gathered to see the marriage of soldier and princess. The great hall was filled with light from 1,000 candles, their flames dancing as brightly as the joy upon every face. The eldest princess walked down the aisle, her gown flowing like silver water, her crown shining like dawn. At her side, the soldier stood tall, his eyes filled with gratitude and quiet pride. When the vows were spoken and the rings exchanged, the king raised his hands. "So shall it be," he proclaimed, "that my daughter and this soldier are bound in truth and honor. He has revealed mystery, and she has shown courage. Together they shall reign with wisdom, and the crown shall rest upon their heads." Cheers filled the hall, and music rose. The feast that followed was grand, with tables heavy with roasted meats, fruits, and golden bread. The sisters smiled, though a trace of longing lingered in their eyes for the world they had lost. Yet they also laughed freely. no longer burdened by secrets, their hearts lighter now that truth had set them free. And so it was that the soldier, once poor and wandering, became king. He ruled with fairness and strength, guided by the wisdom of his bride. The people loved them, and peace filled the land. As for the 12 princesses, never again did they dance in secret halls beneath the earth. Yet the memory of their midnight adventures remained, a tale whispered in quiet corners, a story of silver forests, golden branches, diamond leaves, and the weight of silence that had once bound them. And the moral lingered. Truth, though hidden, will always find its way to light.